in Jennings. I've been, yes, all the Parkers are related to me, right? Um, I'm a doctor by profession. I've been working at the Clearview Psychiatric Hospital now for over 8 years. What else? I'm partner director and an elder in the church, also the head leader of the church. Married, correct? Yes, pastor. Married with one child who's now 1 year old. Thank God. So, and I'm here tonight, this afternoon. I preached this morning, right? Yeah, remember it's 10-day challenge. How many of you are doing the challenges? The 10-day challenge, right? I recommend that you do. So I had to preach this morning. I'm here today to speak about drug use and drug abuse. So yes, you were quite correct, right? A lot of times we don't know people who are using drugs. We more often see those who abuse it. All right? So what are drugs? We're going to pause there, think about it as we pray. Father, may our minds be wiser because we have participated in this discussion. We thank you for the time, the opportunity given for us to learn. May we not only be hearers, but doers. In Jesus' name. Amen. What are drugs? Anybody? Your idea, what you think drug is. You can't, there's no right or wrong to your answer. Hmm? You went medical school? You're a nurse? You did psychology, you did, okay, exactly. So yeah, you studied in the science field, correct. So that's the answer, right? Any chemical substance which can change how your body or your mind work or functions. That's what a drug is, right? Is sugar a drug? Mmm. Mmm. And how many of us put sugar in our tea every morning? Right? Right? Mm-hmm. What is one of the most addictive substance in the world? Anybody? Sugar. Sugar. Yes. Right? It is extremely addictive. If you don't know, now you know. Right? So, drugs include, again, prescription medication, over-the-counter medication, what you take for your headache, alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drugs. What are illegal drugs? Let me hear you. No, what makes a drug illegal? Exactly. Right? So the laws make it illegal. Right? So marijuana is illegal because the laws of the country make it illegal. Understood? You understand that, right? So illegal drugs are drugs which the law deems to be not profitable for use, basically. Right? Because if you think they can profit off of it, they'll make it legal. All right? All right. So, what is drug use? Okay, so we're going to name some drugs that you know. In Antigua, let me say in Antigua, what drugs do you know have been used? Illegal drugs have been used in Antigua. Marijuana. It's still illegal, but it's not decriminalized. Correct. Yes. Anybody else? Cocaine. So we know for sure we have marijuana and cocaine. Anything else? Yes. We actually tested a patient of ours, and he came back negative for marijuana and cocaine, and we were wondering what is happening. He's behaving so strange. So we do a full panel. He came back with angel dust. And we were like, wow, I didn't know that we had that in Antigua. Yes. Right? He came back with it. And so we were like, right? Where would he find these kind of illegal substances? Right? But the most prominent in Antigua is cocaine, marijuana, crack. Right? Alcohol. That's correct. Right? But alcohol is not illegal. All right? And then we have prescription drugs which we take. but I don't think we are going to be speaking about prescription drugs today, right? Can prescription drugs be overused and abused? Yes, it can. That's correct, right? Voltaren, over-the-counter medication like ibuprofen and paracetamol can also be abused. What do we mean by abuse? Why is somebody taking 10 paracetamol in a day? Right? Why? So exactly, but if something not given in release and you know you're taking more than prescribed, then you go to your doctor and ask for something different or figure out the cause, because your pain may not be because of what you think it is. Right? Exactly. Your pain can be caused because of the mind. Right? So you figure out you go to your health provider and figure out what is it that's causing me to need so much medication. Right? Should we at Adventist be taking so much medication? And I speak about this all the time, you know. We have a message a health message that a lot of us don't follow. Right? In our health association, right, the Adventist Health Association, we have made a determination to focus on preventative message for next year for everybody. Preventative message, preventative treatment, right? Not everybody who's hypertensive is going to need hypertensive medication. Not everybody who's diabetic would need diabetic medication, right? What we first need to learn to do is to control it with diet and exercise. But I will eat what I want, right? I love our macaroni and cheese, and we argue if the church have function and they don't want no meat, we argue, right? And we say other people's food tastes fresh, and we need the salt and the seasoning in our foods. And this is what I say, natural seasoning. If you want to season it with some garlic, some onion, some peppers. Right? You don't need to use the salt. Alright? Alright, so drugs. You have yes. See, yeah, the better salt to use is the pink Himalayan salt. I would agree with you, but I would prefer not to use any salt at all. Right? Mm-hmm. All right, so is drug use dangerous? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Drug use is dangerous. And can drug use harm you? Can it harm you? Yes, it can harm you. It can harm your brain, it can harm your body, and sometimes that harm can be permanent. All right? That is why, for me as a doctor, you always start off first with diet and exercise. Right? A lot of times when the situation is very serious, like you come and you have a blood pressure in the 200s, right? The 210 over 160. That's stroke level. So right away you would need medication, prescription medication to bring it down. Right? But what do you do after you bring it down? Do you go back to the way you're eating? Do you go back to your same lifestyle? A lot of times doctors in Antigua would just prescribe it for you because they know you're not changed. True or false? Yes, they know. Those who have lived in Antigua, we know Antiguan people, we know Caribbean people. We're stubborn, and a lot of times we're not supposed to do it, and we still going to do it. Yes. Mm.
You would be able to tell us this as well, but habits are very difficult to break.
Correct.
And
Yes.
that's in the context of, how the brain functions, the chemistry
Yes.
of the brain. You practice something over and over and over again,
Yes.
your brain actually develops pathways.
That's correct.
So that the ability to change your habit from, using salt, for instance, or sugar is something that it's really reprogramming your brain to some
Yes.
extent. I remember I was in this village right here, about maybe a year ago now, and a gentleman, he had, I think he had collapsed at home. And he was this, somebody found him and they went, took him to the hospital and he was told that his blood pressure was very high and he needs to come off of salt. And the man said, "A crazy then crazy." And basically he was saying, how can I stop using salt? How am I going to eat peanut? Right? He- so he was making, I mean, his habits were so heavily entrenched that he could not see himself
Coming out of it.
surviving without
correct.
salt. So I was just making that point. It's a habit.
That's true. I have an example too. In the hospital, right? We had a patient who we chopped off his leg for diabetes, right? Chop off the man's leg for diabetes now. He'd been coming to us before for treatment, and he had to actually take off his leg. After the amputation, guess what we find on his bed? No, sweets, cankers, sweet biscuit. I'm like, how? We found, and he was eating it. We went into his room and we catch him. Like, we just had your legs amputated yesterday. Why are you eating these things? A year after that, guess what happened? Came back again, next leg. Next leg. I wasn't there for that, but I was told that the same thing happened again. Yes. And about 6 months after that, he passed away. Yes. Right? Again, habits are extremely hard to break. How long do you think it takes to break a habit? Anybody? How much? It depends, yes. So 21 days, what else have I heard? Anybody? So my rough estimate, right, is 66 days, 2 months. Right? 2 months and a week. That's my rough estimate. Right? Roughly 66 days. Or 2 months and a little bit over. All right? So habits are not easy to break. It takes time. Yes.
I know we're not speaking about habits, but it's a myth that whenever you take something out of a person's diet, right away they have withdrawal symptoms, just as the person who used drugs. Because and my mom, she was a diabetic, she died, and when they told her to take out salt, she just pulled it out, and it interferes with her taste buds. She didn't want to eat anymore. Because she just took out everything they say not to eat. So I am saying, instead of saying take it out, what about reduce and eliminate as you go along?
That's correct too, but then,
Okay,
we have to learn that sometimes if the situation calls for such measures, you have to use such measures. If you're hypertensive, you need to come off the salt. You can't wait to say reduce slowly over 6 months because you're hypertensive. If you're diabetic, you have to come off the sugars because, or added sugars and put it away, right? Because, again, hypertension and diabetes, sometimes they can kill you and affect your organs and you don't even know, right? So for certain illnesses, you have to start, right? But if your pressure is raising, for now, in the medical field, right, they have raised the hypertension, diet now instead of 140/90, it's now 130. Right? Exactly. Right? And some doctors do start to prescribe medication then. I don't. What I say is change your diet. Something like that, you can start right away to change your diet. And changing your diet and lifestyle doesn't mean to abruptly stop. You start to reduce over time. Yes. Because that way you will last longer with regards to cravings and everything afterwards. Once you reduce over time, it's easier for you to cope than if you just abruptly stop. That's correct, yes.
Right. Okay. My question is, because most of the time when you have a habit, it becomes an addiction.
Yes.
So is breaking the habit?
We're going to go into addiction now. Yes, go ahead.
Oh. Well,
We're going to go into addiction now, yes.
If breaking the habit is the same as breaking
An addiction. We're going to go into that soon. That's a very good question, right? We're going to get into that. Right? Okay, so question. Why do people use... Yes.
Any habit that you have, Pastor, you have to have a willpower.
That's important, yes. But that's where addiction gets into it. Because once
Okay.
you get addicted, then your willpower. Well, we get into that, right? That's correct. Yes.
I was a great lover of chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 2 years
Mm-hmm.
to stop eating chicken.
Mm.
At that time, Kentucky was not in the Virgin Islands. But there was a place they called Chicken Fry. If I passed there 6 times a day,
And you smell it.
and I swear I have to go and get a piece.
Yeah.
So, when I decided to stop the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I go for 6 months. And I keep on passing there. I couldn't avoid passing that area. I was living in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And because I love it so much, I went back. So when I decided to make my final break from it, there was 4 of us living in a 4-bedroom apartment. And they said to me, you can't stop. You try many times, but you can't stop. I said to them, all right, you will see, by God's help. And today is December 31st will make 52 years.
Yeah,
I don't
beef
eat a
chicken.
piece of meat or a piece of chicken.
And that's good. See?
52 years.
It's not easy.
Is that an easy
Right?
thing to do?
It's not an easy thing to do. That's correct. Right? Especially the longer you have in a habit, is the harder the habit is to break. Right? So we get into something else now. Why do people use drugs? Let's go back to drug and drug use. Why do people use drugs? Uh-huh. Give me one.
Some people use it as a way of coping with their stress.
That's correct. Anybody else? I see a hand in front. Mm-hmm.
For pain relief.
Pain relief, correct? Mm-hmm. So let's go into illegal drugs now. Yes. Why do people use illegal
To
drugs?
get a high or a lift in performance. Sportsmen use it for, yes.
That's correct too. Right? All right. So I'll name some. To feel good. Right? I'm not gonna ask how many have smoked or used drugs before, but and alcohol. Right? But I'm gonna get into it too. You feel good when you first use it. I'm gonna explain to you why you feel good and why it becomes addictive. All right? So you feel good, you feel better, and he's correct with regards to performance. Sometimes you actually perform better. Sometimes you use it just out of mere curiosity. Right? Mere curiosity and peer pressure. A lot of the teenagers now in the school, they're smoking because one of their friends smoke, and their friend give it to them and say, just take, nothing gonna happen to you, just smoke it. That's the reason that they smoke too. Right? And once you get that first high, today when I was speaking about health this morning, right? We have people in our congregation who smoked marijuana before. And he stood up and he stopped and he's like, after you get that first high, right? You're always running after it. You can't get that same high again. And you're always running after it. That is why people use it and try to use more and more and more to get that first high. But you can never catch up to that first high. All right? Okay, let's move on to now. So now we understand that. Don't use drugs. Simple, because you will get that first high and you can never catch back that first high again. All right? Drug addiction. What is drug addiction? Anybody? Is it a disease? Everybody except you, right? Is it a disease? Is drug addiction a disease? Yes or no? It's a disease, yes. It's a chronic disease. If you didn't know, now you know. Right? It's a disease. Drug addiction is. All right? It causes a person to take drugs repeatedly despite the harm that the drug caused to them. Repeated drug use can change the way your brain behaves, and it can lead to addiction. At what age does your brain fully develop? Everybody except you. Anybody else? Yes. So the answer was given, right? So we use 25 as a measuring stick, but females develop a little faster than males. So females sometimes by the age of 24, they would have already developed. And males sometimes would take up to 26. So 25 is the boomstick that we use. All right? Any psychoactive substance that is used within the time period of your brain developing, what do you think may happen to your brain? Anybody? This is why it affects the development of your brain. This is why, so again, 25 is the boomstick that we're using, right? This is why we always state, especially to those who have children here and those who have friends, right? If you start to use any form of illicit drugs before the age of 25, chances of you getting a mental illness is extremely high, right? It's extremely high because you have used a substance which can cause an imbalance within the brain. All right? Chronic use now, frequent use, 90%, 95% of our young patients up at Clearview are drug-induced. Right? I should say 95, maybe more than 95. Right? And it's chronic use. Most of them start in third form. Let me tell you now. Most of them start chronic use in third form. I don't know what's so special about third form. Whenever you ask them, come in like, okay, you start smoking in third form. I'm like, how you know? I'll be like, because the 100 patients that come before you told me the same thing. Right? So third form is a right? And that's the farm where a lot of them start in third farm, right? And a lot of them start out because somebody near them smoke, somebody introduced them curiosity and peer pressure. And after that first smoke, they liked it, they got the high, and then they've gone back again. We've had persons who spend over $2,000 a week on marijuana. Right? And he can't get the high he's looking for. And he can't tell you just like that. We smoke every day. And it's like, so how much you smoke? It's not like I don't measure it I measure it in bags. That's how bad it is, right? Because he would wrap it bigger than usual and just smoke it off. Yes.
This is a little funny one. Is it true, they say, is it true that weed make you wise?
So we'll get into that now. Right? We get into that now. Right? So we'll go into marijuana. We'll stem off and go into marijuana since the question was asked. Is marijuana an evil plant? Let me ask you that. So we shouldn't be fearful to talk about marijuana. Right? Marijuana is a plant just like spinach is one of its family. All right? No. Marijuana contains hundreds of chemicals. Right? Our brain has receptors, cannabinoid receptors in our brain. That's what those Rastafari would tell you, right? It's one of the only plants that has chemicals that has receptors in the brain, and it's true. So marijuana has cannabinoid receptors, all right? Now, here's the question. Do you think the marijuana of 1970, 1960 is the same marijuana that we have now? Why do you think it's different? Exactly, that's how it is. So back in the day, research has been done. First, when marijuana came out, research was done, right, in Jamaica, and it showed that marijuana had a THC content of roughly 2%. So again, there's hundreds of chemicals within marijuana, right? You have THC, and you have what we call CBD. You have different types of CBD in marijuana too. All right? So THC is what we call a psychoactive substance of marijuana. What do I mean by that? Anybody? The psychoactive substance is the substance that it gives you the high. We're going to talk about the reward circuit now, right? It's the substance that gives you that good feeling that make you high, THC. Right? Remember I mentioned before that once you get your first high, you're always chasing. Right? After a while, your body doesn't like that THC content no more. You have to get higher THC. So over the years, what do you think have been happening? Do you think a drug seller would sell you marijuana that you know you're not going to use? So again, it has been manipulated, and the THC has now increased from 2% up to 40%. Right? Yep. Their THC, I think they call it the Godfather. 40% of THC inside of that. Right? So imagine marijuana has CBD, right? So you know, people would come to you and say, well, marijuana is used for seizures, it's used for cancer, it's used for all that. Yes, the CBD is. The CBD is the medical, so what doctors use or what the scientists use in the marijuana is the CBD, right? That's the part that you have that helps with your asthma, helps with seizures, helps with cancer, the CBD, right? Let me ask you a question too. Did God make your lungs? I'm telling you this because this is the interaction I had with a patient who was a Rastafari, right? I'm like, okay, so you're talking to me about weed and the good things in weed. And I understand that, right? Did God make your lungs to inhale burnt substances? Right? So I'm asking, why do you smoke it? Why is smoking such a necessity in your life? Right? I don't hear you say you eat it. I don't hear you say you use the oil. I don't hear you say you drink it. It's consistently smoking the marijuana. Why is that so important to you? Right? And so we went into discussion about the chemical content of marijuana. Yes, it's a plant. Right? Yes, God made it. Right? Yes, our brain has cannabinoid receptors. But again, the plant has been manipulated so much over. Somebody asked me even today, can we not use it in oils? And I'm like, if you take that risk, you don't know how much THC is in that marijuana, right? Because again, there's no, yes.
The plant is good for your body,
Mm-hmm.
but when God made it a plant to use good for your body, but men decide to use it for bad.
That's correct.
And use it to hurt your body.
Right? So again, that's true. Men do take what God has made and change it for their pleasure. And that's basically what it is. That is basically what it is. Right? They change it for their pleasure. Alright? Alright, so does everyone who uses drugs become addicted? No. And that's correct. Right? So not everyone who uses drugs becomes addicted. Everybody's brain, everybody's body, how we are made up is different. So you're not the same as me, I'm not the same as you. You're not the same as your brother or your sister or your children. All of us are different. So our reaction to drugs may be different also. Right? I can smoke one joint and become addicted for the rest of my life. Right? And the other person can be smoking every single day and not become addicted. All right? Okay, let's move on now. So, who is at risk for drug addiction? Let me hear you. Anybody? All right. So, okay, so let me explain to you, right? So, your biology, if you have a family member who has a mental illness, the chances of you becoming an addict is higher. Right? If you have a family member who's an addict, the chance of you becoming an addict is higher. Why? Because of your biology. All right? Because of how your genes are, or because of how your chemical, your biological makeup is. So you tend to find a lot of addicts within a specific gene pool, then, and put it that way. All right? Doesn't mean that everybody in it will become addict, but the percentage is higher. All right? Those who have trouble at home tend to, again, one of the reasons for using drugs is to get away from your problem. Right? So if the family has a lot of problems at home, when I say drugs, it's not just marijuana alone, right? Alcohol, right? Any form of drugs that we mentioned before. Right? So a lot of people tend to use that to take their mind away, to give them some form of temporal relief. Right? And to get the temporal. We're going to go into reward now, yes. Right? Mm-hmm.
Why does a person who is possibly addicted, but they don't acknowledge or
Yeah.
admit that they're
We're going to get into
addicted,
that too. We're going to get into that faster, yes.
why do they think that they can stop whenever they want to?
Chemical change in the brain. Right? So when a lot of us who are addicted, we tend to, the brain tells us that we can stop whenever we feel like. Right? And that it's not affecting me. I want to say 100%. 99.9% of my patients at Clearview who use drugs, that's how they are. They say, I can stop on my own. I don't need any help. So we're going to get into addiction now. Right? And how difficult it is for an addict to change is more than just changing a habit. Right? To be addicted is a level above just a habit alone. All right? So the chance of you becoming addicted increases the younger you are or the younger you start. Right? So if you start before the age of 25, becoming an addict, the chances of becoming an addict is extremely high. It's higher than when you're above 25 years old. Do you know why? Anybody? Because what? Because their brain has not fully developed as yet. All right, so what happens to a person when they take drugs? And I'll read it for you. It says, most drugs affect the brain, the reward circuit in the brain, causing euphoria. Do you know what euphoria is? Anybody? What's euphoria? A sense of pleasure. Right? So euphoria is a sense of feeling good. It's more than just feeling good. So it's a sense of feeling extremely good then. Right? It's pleasurable. So when we use drugs, right, it causes that sensation to come out of our brain. What chemical is secreted in the brain that causes that euphoria? Anybody? Correct. So dopamine is the chemical that's secreted in our brain that causes that. Right? A properly functioning reward system motivates a person to repeat behaviors they need to thrive, such as eating, spending time with loved ones. Right? A lot of times when we, let me give you an example. Right? When we are dating, right, and we meet that beautiful young lady, right? Every time you see her, you feel happy. Right? Every time you see her, you feel happy. And you always want to go and meet her. Right? When a mother has a child, every time she holds that child in her hand and the child is suckling, she feels happy. All right? When, let's say, for example, you love ice cream. Every time you see ice cream, every time you see that chicken, right, that Kentucky chicken, right, you want to eat it because every time you take that bite, your brain secretes dopamine, make you feel good. All right? And that's what we call the reward system. That secretion of dopamine, sugar causes it too. So every time you drink juice, it secretes that dopamine in the brain, makes you feel good. All right? And that feeling, the brain thrives for it. The brain wants it. All right? So we tend to give in to what we think the brain wants. All right? So it says here, surges of dopamine in the rewards in the circuit causes reinforcement of pleasure, but it also causes unhealthy behaviors like taking drugs and leading people to repeat that negative behavior over and over and over again. All right? As a person continues to use the drugs, the brain adapts by reducing the ability of the cells in the reward system to respond to it. You understand that? So the more you use, is the less effect you're going to have because the brain is adapting. That's why you have to use more and more because you want the brain to, you're desperate for that high. You're desperate for that good feeling. All right? I know a lady when I went to school, a Mexican. She can just drink like 30 beer in the night, and she good and strong and walking about. Right? And you have people who just drink one and bubbling. Right? So her body has adapted, and even if she drinks 30 beer, she can't get drunk. Her body, because she has a history. All right, so her body has adapted, the brain has adapted, and it causes you to be less responsive to the chemical that you're using. That is why you need more in order to get what you're looking for, right? Or to try and reach that. But the more you use, the more damage it causes. Correct? All right. So it says that these brain adaptation often leads to a person becoming less and less able to derive pleasure from other things they once enjoyed, like food, like the drugs, like sex, like social activity. Right? Long-term use causes changes in the brain chemical system and circuits as well, affecting functions that include learning. So it affects your ability to learn. It affects your ability to judge properly. That's why addicts always feel that they can come off because they have poor judgment. Right? It affects their decision making. It affects their memory. It affects their stress, how they handle stress, and it affects their behavior. All right? And despite being aware of all these harmful conditions, many who use drugs continue to take them, despite knowing they're causing harm. What do you call that? Exactly. That's where addiction comes in. You know, people have been telling you it's not good for you, and you don't care. Right? You no longer care. That's where addiction comes in. All right? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
All that being said, there is an underlying problem that sometimes we fail to look at. Because a person, there's some who just try it by experiment. There are others who basically use it, as you say, just to get away from their problems.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of us trying to get them off of the drugs, we should find out what causes that. You understand?
I agree with you.
Right. So sometimes we see them and they say they need to change, but we don't know what is driving it. We have to find out what is the problem.
Mm-hmm. You're correct. And that's the same way I handle stress too. No amount of medication you give me is going to cause the cause of my stress to go away. If I want someone to not feel anxious, I deal with the problem first. Right? If I don't deal with the problem will always be there. You're going to always feel stress. Understood? So yes, I may give you something to help you sleep. I may give you something to handle the stress temporarily. But as long as, let's say you have your wife or your husband beating you, or your child that's doing something. Huh? Yeah, right? So, right? If you don't deal, you're going to go home every day to the same situation. Right? And if you don't deal with what's causing the stress, no amount of medication is going to take it away. You understand? You have to get counseling. Okay? Go to pastor. He does good counseling. Right? So you need to handle what's causing the stress first. I agree with you. And if this person is using the marijuana to cope, because sometimes it starts off that way, right? And then it goes into just becoming an addict. They can't stop using it, right? If you can deal with what's causing it, then you can give motivation for them to start coming off now, or to reduce, right? Because again, sometimes ending abruptly, as you said, may not be the right method. If you smoke 6 joints a day, you tell them, hey, tomorrow you start smoke 4, and then next week you smoke 2, and the week after that you smoke 1, and the week after that you come off. You understand? Because a lot of times, let me give you an example. We had a Commit to Be Fit challenge back in, I think it's 2016 or 2017. I think it's 2016, where we had a lot of people who were extremely obese go to the gym, and it was on TV, it was on ABS, right? And they were exercising, and everything was just abrupt. 99% of them now are bigger than they were before. Right? About a month or two after they lost like 50 pounds, and so they're losing a lot of weight now, about a month or two after they lost all of that, they just went back because the craving kicked in and they start to go again. Right? So a lot of times the best method is the slow approach to coming off. If it's not life-threatening, I would recommend taking it slow, because the chance of you relapsing or going back to how you were before decreases the slower you take it. All right? All right, let's move on now. There's a fine line between regular drug use and drug abuse and addiction. Very few drug abusers or addicts are able to recognize when they've crossed that line. And while frequency or the amount of drugs consumed do not necessarily constitute drug abuse or addiction, they can often be indicators of drug-related problems. Right? Some persons say they just smoke one joint a day. And if they go tomorrow without a joint, they just feel bad. So sometimes the amount of marijuana you smoke or the amount of alcohol you smoke does not necessarily make it a use or abuse. Some people can't go without drinking on the weekend. Caffeine too, yes, correct, Pastor. Some people can't function in the morning without drinking caffeine. Right? Some people, I have 2 workers at work, they can't function properly if you don't drink the Coca-Cola. Right? They don't drink the caffeine in the cups, no, but they must have the Coke in the morning. If they don't drink it, they feel bad. And that's an addiction. Even though you know it's bad for you, you can't stop on your own. Yes?
Okay. What would cause what people call the shakes? Like when you're trying to get off it, you just...
The withdrawal. Right? So your body is trying to adapt. That's the correct word for it. Your body is trying to adapt. And that adaptation process can cause it to sweat, especially for heavy drug users. It causes it to sweat a lot, causes it to scratch, causes it to behave erratic. So that's when you come off abruptly, and put it away. Coming off slowly shouldn't cause that. But when you come off abruptly, let's say in my hospital at Clearview, right? When they come up by us, they can't smoke. Not at all. Right? So we stop them abruptly, but we give them anti-anxiety medication that counteracts that behavior. All right? So once we give them, it calms them down, and they don't have that drastic withdrawal. A lot of times, a lot of addicts, for fear of getting that reaction, smoke and use alcohol and use drugs and use caffeine. Because if they don't, the body would ask for it. And if you don't have it to give your body, that's when the anxiety kicks in and you start to shake and behave bad. That's how you know that you are addicted to it. Your body is craving it, right? Even though it's not needed, your body craves it. Even though you know it's bad, your body craves it. Why? Because your body has become accustomed to it all the time. All right? All right, so drug addiction and the brain. While each drug produces different effects, all abuse substances share one thing in common. All of them, repeated use of all, alters the way your brain functions. All drugs, doesn't matter what it is. Any form of drugs. All drugs, whether or not it's prescription, over the counter, illegal, sugar, all of it, abuse of it, alters the way your brain functions. All right? Or frequent use of it alters the way your brain functions. Right? It affects the brain. So these commonly include commonly used prescription medication as well. All right? So taking drugs cause, again, the rush of hormone dopamine in your brain, which triggers you to feel pleasure. Your brain remembers this feeling and wants you to repeat it. Right? So I'll say it again. Taking drugs causes a rush of hormone. What's the name of the hormone? What's the name of the hormone?
Dopamine.
Dopamine. It releases it in your brain, which triggers a feeling of pleasure. Your brain remembers this feeling and wants you to repeat it over and over. Yes?
Yes. Okay, so is insulin a drug?
Insulin is a hormone. I won't call it a drug because your body produces insulin on its own. Right? So for me, naturally formed, how would I say it now? Now I'm thinking to give an answer that will be easy to understood. Right? What insulin does in the body is that it allows your body to, it opens up locks in the cell. I'll explain it. So insulin is a key to the door that allows the door to open. Right? And when the door opens, it takes in glucose, basically. All right? So it doesn't affect the brain as much as it does. It just opens. It's a key to open the door so your body can absorb sugar or glucose. That's all it does. So it's not a psychoactive substance to the brain. They cannot become addicted to it. All right? Explain that, right? Do you understand what I mean by that? I try to be simple. So all insulin is, so your pancreas creates insulin. Right? So all insulin is, it's a hormone that when the receptors in your cells get insulin, it opens up a pathway for glucose to enter so your body can get the sugar that is needed. All right? So it does not affect the brain in any way. Too much sugar can affect the brain. All right? That's why we never really put food in itself under the term of drugs except sugar because of the effect it has on the brain. All right? Any other food items, we don't term them as drugs in such a way unless it affects the brain directly. All right? Good question. So, when you become an addict, the substance takes on a significance. Repeat that. All right, yes. So when you become an addict, the substance takes on the same significance as other survival behaviors, such as eating and drinking. What did I say a while ago? Let me repeat it. When you become an addict, what happens? It takes on the survival behavior, and you think you need it just as much as you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to drink. Right? You have to use it, or else your body will react a certain way. Right? Changes in your brain interfere with your ability to think clearly, your ability to exercise good judgment, your ability to control your behavior, and your ability to feel normal without the drugs. So your brain, the chemical makeup in your brain start to change. Right? That's what addiction is different from just a habit. Right? A habit, they may not be changes in your brain. But once you become addicted, right, that would mean now that the chemicals in your brain have started to change, and you would feel that you need that substance in order to survive, and your ability to judge correctly and understand and comprehend that you don't need it is different. All right? So you can't see that you're an addict. Most addicts don't know that they're addicts. Most addicts cannot, what we say, have insight. Means that look into yourself and see that something is wrong and see you need to change. They lack insight because that's what the substance does to their brain. Right? And once that part of your brain is affected, you know there's trouble. Right? Some husband and wife lack insight too, right, Pastor? Some husband and wife lack insight too, because you can be behaving as bad and you just can't see you're behaving bad. Right? And it takes those around you to see your bad behavior. And even if they tell you, this is the way you're behaving, you're like, no. Can't be me. I'm not doing that. Right? That's what we call lack of insight. And addicts have that lack of insight. All right? So no matter which drug you're addicted to, the uncontrollable cravings to use grows more important than anything else. It becomes more important than your family. It becomes more important than your friends, than your career, or even your own health and happiness. The urge to use is so strong that your mind finds many ways to deny or rationalize the addiction. You may drastically underestimate the quantity of drugs you're taking, how much it impacts your life, and the level of control you have over the drug you use. I'm going to tell you, this guy was spending $2,000 a week now. And I'm like, boss, I want your job. Where you working? Because I mean, I get that. Right? Like, I want your job. If you can spend $2,000, right, a week on drugs, right, I would leave my work and come work with you. Where you working? Right? Because where you getting so much money to spend on marijuana, and he was working. And he didn't see a problem with that. Right? And I was sitting down there, I was like, wait. You don't see a problem with using $2,000 a week in drugs? My God, that's $8,000 a month now. You are $8,000 a month you're using drugs, right? Times 10 for 10 months, that's $80,000. You use how much? $100,000 a year in drugs alone, and you cannot look back on yourself and see that Like, boss, you can buy a car. You walking on there. You know, come beg me no ride if go outside claim, you know. But you work for more money than me. Right? And like, you don't have a car yet. You don't have a house yet. But yet still you're living with your parents and you're spending this amount of money. The mom was complaining. The mom is saying, he now pay no current bill, now pay internet, now pay, right? And she had a desire to kick him out of the house because she worked for more money than me. Right? And I'm the one who has to feed him, and I bring food to his room, and I'm not getting $1. Right? And he didn't see anything wrong at all with that. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. Chemical dependency, yes.
And based on what you're saying, it appears to me that it's possible that there may be other things outside of drugs
Yes.
that can create chemical changes in the
The
brain.
brain, yes.
Maybe activities or habits.
Correct.
Or things that we do
Yes.
that can actually do that. And it might not be called a drug, but the
Yes.
behavior itself is
Correct.
does bring about changes.
That's correct.
And that's one. And then secondly, another thing that you were saying there, because outside of drug use, there are people who do not have insight.
Yes, that's correct.
You know, is that a mental issue? Is it a chemical issue of the brain? Why the person cannot seem to appreciate that their behavior affects other people negatively? So-
It is a mental issue. That's correct. Lack of insight is a mental issue. Doesn't mean you have a mental illness, but it is a mental issue, right? Sometimes our habits over years cause us to create lack of insight, right? You don't see anything wrong because this is the behavior you've had for years upon years upon years upon years. This is a way. People always say, this is how I talk. This is how I behave. Nothing wrong with me. You never ever hear people talk about that before? Right? And they refuse to change because that's how this. And the older you are, the harder it is. It's not always correct, you know, because people who are old can also change their habits, right? But a lot of times we refuse to do that because we're stubborn, right? So our habit can also cause us to have, our consistent in our habit can also cause us to have lack of insight. Right? If you raise up in a family where the husband beats the wife or the wife beats the husband, and this is what you see all the time, you think it's normal. Right? So when you go into your marriage now, you do the same because it's normal. And when pastor tell you you're doing something wrong, you're like, no, that's not wrong. I see it all the time and it's normal to me. Right? So the way we grow up, the environment we live in, we take out what we think is normal for society, and we go with that. So a lot of time our lack of insight is caused by how we are raised, all right, and those around us. So what are the signs that somebody is using drugs or abusing drugs, right? Sometimes you begin to spend a lot of time alone, right? I have an example of a patient who was very talkative with his family, started to smoke. Again, most of my patients are smokers, right? So when I'm talking about smoking, remember that drug use is not just smoking alone, right? Caffeine, alcohol, all of that, right? I'm giving you examples from what I have from Clearview, right? So this patient now, he started to smoke in third farm, right? And his mother noticed that he was always locked in his room, but she never smelled any smoke. So by the time she come home, he's just quiet, locked in his room. He would become untidy, so his room started become untidy, and she would leave it up as he's just a teenager. So she left him to himself in the room. When she come home from work, the room smelled like perfume. Right? The room smelled like perfume. So like, why you using perfume? She didn't know he was smoking, right? And she never inquired. So he started to do bad in school, started getting problems, started to become isolated to himself. Right? She never knew he was using drugs until he came up by us. And I one simple question now. Hi, you smoking? And he was like, no, I'm not smoking. It's like, okay, we're going to find out today. Go and pee in a cup for me. Oh, yes, smoke. Mom was like, how long are you smoking for now? Third farm? I'm like, answer me now because I already know the answer. I like, yeah, like, Mom, this is where you start to notice changes, right? And she like, yeah, I'm like the boss smoking since third farm. Like, how much weed is smoking now? Right? Again, note, this is a secret, right? Especially for internet. We don't know how much marijuana you smoke in a day. If you tell us one, we have to go with one, right? But what we know is if you smoke or not, and that's what's important. So when heavy smokers would tend to have marijuana in their urine up to 30 days, right? Heavy smokers. If you just smoke one time in a day or two or three, it's gone out your system, right? So if you want to find out if somebody's smoking, you test them when you have parents. If you want to find out if your son's smoking or your daughter's smoking, test them right away. Right? If you wait for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you mightn't get the substance and even already passed out. But heavy smokers, unfortunately, for those of you who don't know, right, marijuana can be absorbed by the fat cells in your body, in your liver, all over. Right? So even if you haven't smoked for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if you're a heavy smoker within that month, we're going to find it in your system. Right? Because it's absorbed by your fat cells. So even if you don't smoke, you will still have the THC in your body. And it will still be secreting. You understand that, right? It will still be secreting continuously every day. That is why, again, we recommend you to stay off of it. See with the mic, yes?
Yes. What I notice, Elder, is that young men have a tendency to be violent when they smoke.
I agree.
It's
yes.
a
It takes
disorder.
poor judgment. Poor judgment. That's one of it too. Right? And they come very ignorant. I don't use ignorant. They're just ignorant. Right? I don't know how to put it. That's what I use. Right? I'm Antigua, and some people use it just like that. Just ignorance. I don't know what else to use to say it. Right? Yes.
You said that the TCH stays
THC,
in the THC stays in the fat cells. So for those who aren't really smoking but are secondhand to smoke, it affects them.
Chronic use. Right? If you take it right away, it may not be absorbed.
No, they're not smoking. They're
I know.
Those
If you're a chronic secondhand smoker, yes, it can be in the system too.
Okay.
Yes. And we've had people who try to say they're secondhand smokers. Right? And like, okay, that's fine. I'll test it now. I'll test it next week. I'll test it the week after. And I'll test it the week after. Let's see if it can come back positive. Right? A lot of times they try to fool you. Right? But I mean, when you have experience, you have experience. Right? You can't tell a carpenter how to build a house more than the carpenter. The carpenter have 40 years experience. He can know how to build a house better than you. You understand? Exactly. So that's how it is. So we'll say, some people will be like, no, it's secondhand smoking. I was like, okay, that's fine. Right? I'll give you this one off. I'll test it next week and see how that goes. And the next week after that, I'll test you again. Make it come back positive a month in a row. I know you're smoking. Right? Chronic. So usually, you will find it more in people who are chronic. Right? So if you smoke it one time, you may not just absorb into you, but the more you use it, is a higher chance of it absorbing into your fat cells. All right? And if you use it 4 and 5 and 6 times a day, right, people 8 and 9 times a day. So we had one that was 2001, he was smoking back to back to back to back. Like, how you function at work? Right? But that's why he needed to function. Right? So, all right, let's move on. So how do you know that someone is using drugs or abusing drugs? Yes?
How dangerous is secondhand smoking to addiction? Because some people say, I don't smoke, but their friends smoke and they're always around their friends.
So when you absorb secondhand smoking, you're not absorbing as much of the THC as the smoker does, but you're absorbing it. Right? So it's a tough question because I don't know if you become an addict because you're not smoking in itself, right? But the chances of you going to use it are higher because you're around the environment even more, and it can be in your system, and it can affect the way you think and the way you process. But becoming an addict may be different unless you start to use it and really think you're going to become an addict, right? But again, the chance of you starting to use it is higher. The friends you keep sometimes will cause you to do things that you don't want to do, all right? And you might be around your friend smoking all the time, and you don't see anything wrong with him or her. Because we have females up by us, right? And you might say, okay, nothing wrong. I know he for years now, he smoke all the time, nothing wrong with he. And you go and take that first puff, and bam, something wrong with you. Right? Okay. How to help a friend or family member? We can't leave off without that. Right? Some things you don't want to do. You don't want to preach. For addict, right? You don't want to lecture. You don't want to threaten them. You don't want to bribe them. And you don't want to demoralize them. Right? Want me to repeat that again? So for an addict, you don't want to preach to them. Right? When I say preach, I'm saying like I am good and you are bad. That kind of thing, right? I am Jesus and you are Satan. Right? You don't want to, you can have a discussion with them, but you don't want to overly lecture them. You don't want to seem like you are the educated all in all. Right? A lot of people tend to react better when they know you're on their level. Right? So sometimes for certain patients, even though my doctor has to speak in dialect, but that's what they understood. When you start to speak in dialect, then they're like, okay, then ease down, listen and talk to you. So, exactly, right? That's how they feel sometimes. If you're too stush and you're too bougie and you go and have a chat with them, then at times you may cause them to just draw back and don't want to give you any information. Right? Don't be a martyr. Right? Avoid emotional appeal that may only increase feelings of guilt and the compulsion to drink or use other drugs. So for parents, if your son or daughter is using it, don't go and ball on the house. Right? Yeah, don't go and ball on the house, please. Right? They may feel guilty and feel bad for a while. And what do you think they're going to use to take away the guilt? Okay then. Right? So, don't assume their responsibilities. Right? Or taking over their responsibilities protects them from the consequences of their behavior. Don't cover up. Don't lie for them. Don't make excuses for his or her behavior. Don't argue when using. Right? If the person is using, don't cut them off, please. Avoid arguing with persons when they are using alcohol or drugs, right? At the point where he or she can have, because remember, the judgment is not the same, right? Especially if they're an addict. Don't argue. You can relay a fact or point, and this is what it is, leave it as that, right? There's no reason to go into a big argument. When I say argument, discussions and argument are different, right? When you argue, you try to prove that you're right. When you discuss, you listen. And you give, you listen, and you give. So argument is a yes or no. Me right and you wrong. Right? So don't have arguments. All right? Don't join them. Don't try to keep up with them by drinking or using too. All right? So what you can do, you can learn all you can. That's what we have here today. Learn all you can about it. Educate yourself first. Right? Once you're educated and you have information, then you can use that information wisely. Right? Don't go and talk to somebody about drugs when you don't know about it. Right? Sometimes, and I learned it too, right? Sometimes the best counselors of addiction are those who have been addicted themselves. Right? The best person to tell you to come off marijuana at times are people who have used marijuana before. Right? So, again, don't feel that you're the all-in-all and just, right? Learn before you go and talk to them. Because if you go with all the education and you can't answer the question, they're going to just more stubborn. Right? Speak up. Offer your support. Talk to the person about your concerns. Offer your help and support, including your willingness to go with them to get help. Like any other chronic illnesses, the earlier you treat it, the better. Right? Express your love and concern for the parents who are here, or the brothers and sisters who are here. Express your love and your concern. Don't wait for your loved one to hit rock bottom. Sometimes they say, make you hit rock bottom, make you go down there, then you will learn. You hear that before, right? Oh, he said all the time. Right? When you reach down there, you will realize how bad it is. Almost all the time, they don't realize how bad it is. All right? So you try and adjust it early. Don't wait for them to hit rock bottom. You may be met with excuses. Yes.
marijuana, the longevity stays in the body by being absorbed by the fatty tissues. What about drinking alcohol?
Same thing too, yes.
Because
That's correct. You're correct.
my elder sibling, he was living with me. He's an alcoholic. And every day or every night I come from college, it's confusion because he's always drunk.
Yep.
Always drunk. So I said to him one night, you need to stop drinking. 'Cause I was up to 3 o'clock just trying to catch my bearing with this. Because coming from work and college, it is not easy. And always drunk. So I said, you're always drunk. Why? And he said to me, I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking. I said, but if you're not drinking, why you're always drunk? He said to me, oh, he just wake up drunk.
Nah.
So
He's drinking, he sleep.
So I said to him, that is impossible.
Exactly.
Oh, you can't just wake up drunk. You have to be drinking
every
secretly without. And I said to him, no, I don't abhor alcohol in my house. You know, this house is a Christian home. But you're always drunk. So see that he say he don't drink, but he always wake up drunk. So I want to know what if the alcohol stays in his body.
He's drinking. How about that? He's drinking. Take my medical advice. He's drinking. Right? That's exactly how it is. A lot of people tell me, I don't smoke. I don't smoke. And we were like, okay, that's fine. You tell me you don't smoke. Let me test you and see. Yes. And then the wheat sugar cake, edibles, oils. Yes.
Adventists, a lot of people are being caught with
That's
this
true.
thing. So
Yes.
I just wanted to say a quick word on that.
It's a lot. Let me explain this, right? It's edibles are potent, right? Because edibles, well, different ways they make edibles. Sometimes they use the oil. Sometimes they will steam the marijuana and get the oil out of it, the leaf itself or the cannabis itself, and use the potent oil, right? With the highest THC to make the edibles. Sometimes it's even more potent than smoking it, right? Sometimes eating 1 or 2 cookies and that knock you out, right? The knockout is caused by the high levels of THC. So whether or not you eat it, you smoke it, or you drink it, THC is a psychoactive substance which will affect your brain, right? So people will say, I'm not smoking it, I'm just eating. We have people up by me who eat it and use it to make tea and use the oil to soak in stuff, right? But again, we don't know the levels of THC in the marijuana that we're using. Even the new farm that government, right? That government and them have, they've been at measuring the THC within the marijuana. So we don't know if it's high levels of THC or low levels of THC. Again, I say with the Adventist, if we're using it, if we want to use it, right? Because we have people who do use it, right? For cancer, for asthma, etc. But what they use is the form that has high levels of CBD and low levels of THC. If you can't find that, don't use it. I'm telling you right out the back right there, right? So I'm not going to say I'm against using it, right? If you find one that doesn't have a lot of psychoactive substance, your body is the temple of God. You don't want anything that will cause your brain to cause you to not think properly. You don't want to use anything that will cause your cognitive function to decrease or to be altered. The devil used that in us. I spoke on sleep today, right? And lack of sleep can cause our cognitive function to decrease, and it can cause us to be more susceptible to temptation. Same thing with marijuana too. When your cognitive function is altered, it will cause it to be more susceptible to temptation. And the devil will use it. He don't waste no time. He doesn't waste any time in getting to you. Right? So as soon as you're unable to think clearly, you've opened the lane for him to pass through. Right? That is why I wouldn't recommend you using something that you don't know anything about. Right? Even though your brother and your sister use it, even though your family use it, again, everybody is different. Are you going to take a chance on you and be caught off guard? Right? So, soon finish, right? Let me finish off with how we can help our families, right? So, express love and concern. Don't wait for your loved one to hit rock bottom. You may be met with excuses, denial, anger when you confront them, right? Be prepared to respond with specific examples of behavior that has you worried. This is what you do. If you know they're behaving a certain way, just point out this behavior. You're behaving like this, right? And I believe that it's caused because of this. You're behaving like this. And I say, remember you behaved like that yesterday or the day before. So these are your behaviors, and it shows that something is not right, right? One and one are added up to two. All right? Don't expect the person to stop without help. You have heard it before, right? All the time. They promise to start to cut down. They promise to stop using. They'll give you everything. Yet still, again, once you become an addict, it is extremely hard because of the lack of your cognitive function. It's hard for you to stop. You're going to hear plenty excuses, right? We have to be there and point it out. And they're not going to get better if you don't help. They are not going to get better by themselves. Let me tell you this, right? They can try and start off, but the chance of them relapsing are extremely high. They need your support all the time, right? All the time. It is easier if Brother Parker had somebody behind him all the time when he drive in and say, hey, no, you can't do that. Remember, it won't be as hard because you have support beside you to tell you whenever you go near it, hey, remember I'm here to help you and support you, right? A lot of times when you're by yourself, it's extremely hard for you to stop, all right? Support recovery as an ongoing process. So once they start to recover, don't just drop them. You know why you don't just drop them? Like they will go right back to what they were before, right? So you have to always be there maintaining by their side until the end. It's like a marriage. All right? Thank you very much. I hope you have learned. Any questions? Any other questions? Yes.
One question. Is it possible for someone to be allergic to marijuana?
Anything. Anything. Let me give you an example. I know a girl who's allergic to coal. And then C-O-L-D, coal. And then cold temperatures. She go in AC, she starts to swell up. And you know how they found out she had an allergy to coals? The doctor had to get a piece of ice and rub the ice on her hand.
And she died?
No, she didn't die. Right? Having an allergy doesn't mean you're going to die, right? But it means that you have an allergic reaction. Right? So whenever she goes into the AC, she will get stuffy, start to sneeze a lot, start to have it wasn't life-threatening, but she knew something was wrong. Whenever December time comes, or January time comes, to start every year to start get stuffy and start feeling funny. Right? So when they rub a piece of ice on their hand, it just got a whale on their hand. I was like, ice. That's the experience that I had. Right? I saw for myself. The whale come on the hand, I'm like, wow, so you are allergic to cold temperatures. So she can't work in AC. When temperature time comes, when the cold time comes, she can't live in like Canada, those places there that get cold. Caribbean is the perfect weather for her. Right? So if she was in those areas, she would have probably gone by now. So we can be allergic to anything at all. Okay. Right? Yes. Depending on who you are, your body is made up. You're special. Each one of us is special, and we don't know what we may be allergic to. All right? So thank you very much for listening to my long presentation. Thank you.
I just want to thank, should we give brother, or should I say Elder Knowles, another round of applause, Dr. Knowles. Not sure which designation he wants, but a very, very good comprehensive presentation there. And I saw a lot of persons were engaged for long, listening without even talking, so that is good. I hope persons would have learned something this afternoon, even how to look for signs in some of our young people, whether they be our children, cousin, family member, neighbor, or something, to help them to avoid being addicted to drug abuse. So I want to really thank you for taking this time out to come this afternoon, and I hope this is not the last time we see you. Well, the last time for the year, more than likely, but next year I think you will be back again. Yes, definitely. And I'm sure Pastor Bradford will want you to come and do something else here as well, because he's that kind of guy. So we're going to ask everyone to, to stand as we sing the closing song, which is 156 in the Advent Youth Sing, and we'll sing the first verse only, which is Redemption Joint Night. Yeah, Brother Hendricks like some playtime, and while he's setting up there, just two quick announcements. One, that next week there will be no AY because there's going to be the concert starting at 4 p.m. And, sorry? Somebody says basically AY, but just in a different form. Let's work with that. And also, yes, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the health department, I think it is, or the health association, they're having a sports/fun day at the police ground. So hopefully, Sister Marilyn, I'm not sure if Pastor Bradway gave you your color shirt as yet. I don't know. I see you smiling. I don't know what that means. Sorry? Another engagement. Wow. You do engagement 10 o'clock in the morning, but it's okay. Go with the Lord wherever you go. So those who can make it, hope that they can come out and maybe have a good time. So that's tomorrow at 10. I know at the end of the year as well, that's the 31st, which is All Year's Night. After the service, there will be a social at Oldwood as well. So we're asking persons who are able and have some time, and just to end up the year in a good way with some other fellow brethren from different congregations. Will go out there and have a good time as well. So that's and there will be no AY on the 24th, which is Christmas Eve, allowing everyone to stay with their families, as well as to, I guess, prepare if you're going into town in the evening, not before sunset. So you can also have a safe, trip in town as well if you look for some last-minute gifts. I don't know. I said, Pastor, speak for the pastor of this family. That's okay. Yes, Brother Hendricks, you can just go ahead and play for us.
Years of time have come and gone since I first saw it all. How Jesus will come again someday. If back then it seems so real, then I just never feel how much closer it's coming yesterday. Signs of the times are everywhere, and there's a brand new feeling in the air. Keep your eyes upon distant skies. Lift up your head, redemption draw and
We'll ask Brother Parker to pray for us, Cartwright Parker, to close us off this afternoon. Amen. And just one other additional announcement quickly. Our last AY session will be the 30th of December, and that's going to be a Friday night. So our last AY session will be